Alien girl in the kitchen? What the human discovered at Home Park Giseok was exhausted when he finally pulled his truck into the gravel driveway of his farmhouse. The emergency surgery on old Farmer Beek's pregnant cow had taken 6 hours, and his muscles ached in ways he did not know were possible. The veterinarian climbed out of his truck and stretched his back, groaning at the satisfying pop of his spine. At 34 years old, he was starting to feel every late night and early morning in his bones. The rural life was peaceful, but never easy. His farmhouse sat at the edge of a small village, surrounded by rice fields and mountains that turned purple in the evening light. He had inherited the property from his grandmother 3 years ago, and he had never regretted leaving the city behind. Out here, the stars were bright and the air was clean. Giseok walked toward his front door, already dreaming of a hot shower in his bed. But he stopped when he heard something strange coming from inside his house, a clicking sound, followed by the unmistakable noise of a cabinet door opening. His first thought was raccoons. The clever creatures had broken into his kitchen twice last summer, and he had spent a fortune fixing the damage. He grabbed the flashlight from his truck and quietly approached the back door that led to his kitchen. The clicking grew louder as he pressed his ear against the wooden door. This did not sound like any raccoon he had ever heard. The rhythm was too deliberate, too careful. Something was searching through his cabinets with purpose. Giseok took a deep breath and slowly turned the door handle. He pushed the door open just enough to shine his flashlight into the dark kitchen, and what he saw made his heart stop completely. Behind his refrigerator, huddled in the narrow gap between the appliance and the wall, was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was small, perhaps the size of a 10-year-old child, with translucent blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Large silver eyes stared back at him, filled with absolute terror. The creature knew the girl, because Giseok could somehow tell this was a child, clutched a torn bag of raw rice to her chest. Grain spilled across the floor around her feet, and her thin fingers were covered in white powder. "What in the—" Giseok whispered, and his voice seemed to shatter whatever frozen moment had held them both in place. The alien girl let out a high-pitched shriek and bolted. She scrambled past him with surprising speed, her bare feet slapping against the kitchen tiles. But she only made it 3 steps before her legs buckled beneath her. She collapsed hard, the bag of rice scattering everywhere as she did not get up. She simply lay there on his kitchen floor, her small chest heaving with rapid, desperate breaths. Even in the dim light, Giseok could see how thin she was, how her blue skin stretched tight over visible bones. His fear evaporated in an instant. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, this was a starving child who had just fainted in his kitchen. Giseok knelt beside her carefully, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. His years of veterinary training took over automatically. He checked her pulse, or what he assumed was her pulse, by pressing gently against her thin wrist. There was a heartbeat there, rapid but steady. Her skin was cool to the touch, almost cold, and he wondered if that was normal for her species or a sign of something wrong. He noticed bruises on her arms, scratches on her legs, and dirt caked into every fold of her strange clothing. "How long have you been out there?" he murmured, though he knew she could not understand him. The forests around his village were dense and unforgiving. Surviving out there alone would be nearly impossible for a human child, let alone an alien one. The girl stirred slightly, her silver eyes fluttering open for just a moment. She looked up at him with an expression he recognized from countless frightened animals he had treated over the years. Pure, desperate fear mixed with exhausted surrender. She expected him to hurt her. That much was clear from the way she flinched when he reached toward her. Hey, it is okay," Giseok said softly, pulling his hand back. He kept his voice low and calm, the same tone he used with injured dogs and frightened cats. "I am not going to hurt you. You are safe here." She did not understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to reach her. Her tense shoulders relaxed just slightly, and her rapid breathing began to slow. Jiseok made a decision in that moment. He did not think about what she was or where she came from. He did not worry about the implications or the dangers. He simply saw a child who needed help, and helping was what he did. He carefully gathered her into his arms, surprised by how light she was. She weighed almost nothing, like a bundle of hollow bones wrapped in paper-thin skin. Whatever she had been eating out there, if she had been eating at all, it had not been enough. He carried her to his living room and laid her gently on the couch, covering her with the warmest blanket he owned. She watched him with those enormous silver eyes, too weak to run, but still alert, still afraid. "Stay here," he said, holding up his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I am going to get you some water. Water, okay?" He mimed drinking, and something flickered in her eyes' recognition, maybe, or hope. Jiseok hurried to his kitchen and filled a bowl with clean water. He also grabbed some plain bread, unsure what an alien could safely eat. When he returned, she had not moved an inch. He placed the water beside her, and after a moment of hesitation, she grabbed the bowl with both hands and drank like she had never seen water before. Half of it spilled down her chin, but she did not seem to care. Jiseok sat on the floor a safe distance away and watched her drink. Questions flooded his mind. Who was she? How did she get here? Was anyone looking for her? But those could wait. Tonight, he would simply make sure she survived until morning. Everything else could come later. Alien girl in the kitchen? What the human discovered at home. The first 3 days were the hardest. The alien girl, Jiseok, had started calling her Little Blue in his head, refused to come out from behind the couch. She had wedged herself into the narrow space between the furniture and the wall, and she watched him with those huge silver eyes every time he moved through the room. Jiseok did not push her. He simply left food and water nearby and went about his daily routine. On the 4th day, she finally ate something he prepared. It was plain steamed rice, still warm, and she reached out with trembling fingers to grab the bowl the moment he turned his back. He pretended not to notice, but his heart lifted with hope. Communication was impossible at first. She did not understand Korean or English or any of the few phrases Jiseok knew in other languages. But she was smart, incredibly smart, and she began picking up patterns within days. Jiseok would point to objects and say their names slowly. "Water," he would say, holding up a glass. "Rice," he would announce, presenting a bowl. "Blanket," he would explain, wrapping one around his own shoulders. She absorbed everything like a sponge. By the end of the first week, she could say nearly 50 Korean words, though her pronunciation was strange and clicking sounds would slip in between syllables. Her name, she told him through gestures and broken sounds, was something like Vera, at least. That was the closest Jiseok's human tongue could manage. When he said it, she smiled for the first time, and that small expression transformed her entire face. The smile did not last long. Jiseok could see the weight she carried behind her silver eyes. This was not simply a lost child. This was a hunted one. She drew pictures to explain what had happened to her. Her artistic skills were impressive, and the images told a story that made Jiseok's blood run cold. A ship falling from the sky, breaking apart in flames. Figures in uniforms chasing a small blue shape through forests. The same small shape hiding in darkness, alone and afraid. "Someone is looking for you," Jiseok said, pointing at the uniformed figures she had drawn. "Bad people?" Vera nodded vigorously, her silver eyes growing wide with fear. She pointed at herself, then made a slashing gesture across her throat. "They want to hurt you," Jiseok understood, and his jaw tightened with anger. "They want to kill you?" Another nod, and this time her lower lip trembled. Jisiok knelt down to her eye level and spoke slowly and clearly. I will not let them. You are safe here, Vera. I will protect you. She did not understand all his words, but she seemed to grasp his meaning. For the first time since he found her, she moved toward him instead of away. She reached out with one small blue hand and touched his arm, a gesture so tentative and trusting that it nearly broke his heart. He stayed perfectly still, letting her come to him at her own pace. From that moment on, Vera became his shadow. She followed him around the house, staying just a few steps behind, always watching. When he sat down to eat, she sat nearby. When he worked at his desk, she curled up on the floor beside his chair. The food situation required careful experimentation. Vera could eat most vegetables without problems, but meat made her violently ill. Fruits were tricky, apples were fine, but citrus caused a rash on her translucent skin. Jisiok kept detailed notes on everything she could and could not eat. His veterinary training proved unexpectedly useful. He treated her dietary needs like he would treat any exotic animal with unknown requirements. You like sweet potatoes, he observed one evening, watching her devour her third helping. That is good to know. Vera looked up at him and attempted to repeat the Korean word for sweet potato. What came out was a garbled mess of syllables and clicks, and she frowned in frustration. Jisiok could not help it, he laughed. Not at her, but at the adorable determination on her small face. Vera's frown deepened, but then something shifted. She heard the warmth in his laughter, saw the kindness in his eyes, and suddenly she was laughing too. The sound was strange and musical, like wind chimes mixed with bird song, and it was the most beautiful thing Jisiok had ever heard. In that moment, the barrier between human and alien seemed paper thin. 2 weeks passed, and Vera began sleeping on the couch instead of behind it. She started speaking in 3-word sentences. She even helped Jisiok wash vegetables for dinner, though she spent more time playing with the water than actually cleaning anything. But the peace could not last forever. Jisiok noticed the lights on the 3rd night of the 3rd week. They appeared in the sky above the mountains, hovering silently where no aircraft should be. They were not stars, and they were not planes. They moved with purpose, scanning the landscape below. He watched them through his bedroom window, his heart sinking with dread. They were searching. They were getting closer. Vera appeared beside him, drawn by his tense silence. When she saw the lights, every trace of color drained from her already pale blue skin. Rethus, she whispered, and the name sounded like a curse. Who is Rethus? Jisiok asked, but Vera just shook her head and pressed closer to his side. He wrapped an arm around her thin shoulders and pulled her close. Outside, the lights continued their methodical sweep across the darkened countryside. Whatever happens, Jisiok said quietly, I meant what I said. I will protect you, Vera. They will have to go through me first. She looked up at him with those enormous silver eyes, and for a moment she looked so young, so fragile, so utterly dependent on the kindness of this strange human who had taken her in. Uncle, she said softly, testing out the Korean word she had learned earlier that week. Jisiok felt his throat tighten. Yeah, he managed, pulling her closer. Yeah, I guess I am. The lights in the sky moved on, disappearing behind the mountain ridge. But they would be back, Jisiok knew it in his bones. The hunters were closing in, and time was running out. Alien girl in the kitchen? What the human discovered at home 1 month after Jisiok found Vera in his kitchen. She finally told him the truth about who she was and why they were hunting her. Her Korean had improved dramatically. She still struggled with complex sentences, but she could make herself understood. And on that rainy evening, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, she opened up to him completely. My father was an important person, Vera began, her silver eyes fixed on her hands. He spoke against the Dominion, the leaders of my people. He said they were wrong, that they hurt other species for no reason. Jisiok listened in silence, his heart heavy with what he already suspected was coming. They called him traitor, Vera continued. They took him away in the night. My mother tried to stop them, and she stopped, unable to finish the sentence. She did not need to. I am sorry, Jisiok said softly. I am so sorry, Vera. She shook her head as if pushing away the memory. I was put on transport ship. They were taking me to a place called Re-Education Facility. They would make me forget my parents, forget who I am, make me believe Dominion is good. But the ship crashed, Jisiok prompted gently. Yes, something went wrong with the engines. We fell from the sky over this planet over Earth. I was only survivor. Vera hugged her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. Commander Rethus was in charge of taking me to the facility. When ship crashed, he survived too. He was on different vessel, following behind. Now he hunts me. Why? Jisiok asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Why does he care so much about one child? Because I am last of my family, Vera said, and her voice cracked. My father had many followers. If I live, I am symbol of hope for them. If I die, their hope dies too. Rethus wants to erase my bloodline completely. Jisiok felt sick to his stomach. This child had done nothing wrong. Yet an entire military force was hunting her simply because of who her parents were. And Earth? He asked. Why did they not simply land and take you right away? Vera almost smiled at this. Earth is nothing to the Dominion. Your planet is, how do you say, primitive. Not worth their attention. They did not expect anyone to survive here. Rethus must find me quietly, without the Galactic Council knowing he operated in unregistered space. So he cannot simply invade, Jisiok realized. He has to keep this secret. Yes, but that does not make him less dangerous. He will kill anyone who gets in his way, including you, Uncle. There it was again, that word that made Jisiok's chest ache with an emotion he could not name. This child, this alien girl from another world, had chosen him as her family. Let me worry about that, he said firmly. You just focus on getting stronger. Whatever comes, we will face it together. Vera looked up at him with wonder in her silver eyes. Why? She asked suddenly. Why do you help me? What do you mean? I am not human. I am not your child. Helping me brings danger to you and your people. The Dominion is powerful, more powerful than anything on Earth. Why risk everything for someone like me? Jisiok considered the question carefully. It deserved an honest answer. When I found you in my kitchen, do you know what I saw? He asked. Vera shook her head. I saw a kid. A scared, hungry, hurt kid who needed help. I did not see an alien or political refugee or a symbol of rebellion. I just saw a child who was suffering. He leaned forward, meeting her silver eyes with his brown ones. Where I come from, that is all that matters. When a child needs protection, you protect them. It does not matter what species they are or what planet they come from. You just do it because it is the right thing to do. Vera was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked in a small voice, Are all humans like you? Jisiok thought about his neighbors, his village, the grandmother who had raised him with stories about helping strangers in need. Many of them, yes, he said. We are not perfect. We make mistakes. We hurt each other sometimes. But when it comes to children, especially children in danger, most humans will stand up and fight. Even against impossible odds? Especially against impossible odds, Jisiok smiled. We are stubborn that way. Vera was silent again, processing this information. Then she crawled across the floor and pressed herself against his side. I am glad I crashed on your planet, she whispered. Jisiok wrapped his arm around her and held her close. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere beyond the clouds, alien ships were still searching. "I am glad you found my kitchen," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the storm. But the peace was shattered when Jisiok's phone buzzed with a message from his neighbor. "Strange people in the village," the message read. "Not from around here. Asking about unusual sightings. Wearing weird clothes. Be careful." Jisiok felt his blood run cold. The hunters had arrived, and they were no longer content to search from the sky. He looked down at Vera, who had fallen asleep against his side, her small face finally peaceful. "They will not take you," he promised quietly. "Not while I am still breathing." He reached for his phone and began typing messages to the villagers he trusted most. If Rethus wanted a fight, Jisiok would make sure he found one. The commander had made one critical mistake. He had come to a human village, and he had threatened one of their children. He was about to learn exactly what that meant. Alien girl in the kitchen? What the human discovered at Home Commander Rethus was not what Jisiok had expected. The alien was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin the color of dark purple stone and eyes like burning coals. He wore a uniform that seemed to absorb light, and his voice carried the cold authority of someone who had never been questioned. He arrived in the village square at noon, flanked by 4 soldiers armed with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. The villagers gathered at a distance, watching with the suspicious eyes of people who did not trust outsiders. "We are searching for a fugitive," Rethus announced, his voice somehow carrying to every corner of the square without shouting. A small creature, approximately this height, with blue skin and silver eyes. Anyone who has seen this creature must report immediately. Nobody spoke. The farmers and shopkeepers simply stared at the aliens with carefully blank expressions. Rethus's coal-red eyes narrowed. "This fugitive is dangerous. She is a criminal of the Thalari Dominion. Harboring her is a violation of galactic law. Old Mrs. Yoon, the woman who ran the village's only grocery store, stepped forward. "We do not know any galactic law," she said calmly. "We are just simple farmers. We have not seen any blue creatures." "You are lying," Rethus hissed. "Prove it, Mrs." Yoon replied, and several villagers behind her nodded in agreement. Jisiok watched the confrontation from the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding. He had hidden Vera in the old war bunker beneath his grandmother's abandoned house, a space that had not been opened in decades. The Thalari had superior technology, but they did not know this land. They did not know about the tunnels dug during the war, the hidden cellars beneath old farmhouses, the secret paths through the mountains that locals had used for generations. Rethus turned to one of his soldiers and spoke in a clicking language Jisiok did not understand. The soldier produced a device that looked like a metal box and began waving it around. "Our scanners will find her," Rethus said confidently. "Your primitive structures cannot hide her energy signature." But the scanner kept beeping uselessly, confused by the village's ancient wiring, the underground water systems, and the natural mineral deposits in the surrounding mountains. Earth's chaotic infrastructure was proving to be an unexpected shield. Rethus's expression shifted from confidence to frustration. He grabbed the scanner from his soldier and examined it himself, his coal-red eyes burning with anger. "This backwater planet," he muttered. "Nothing works correctly here." He turned back to the villagers, his patience clearly exhausted. "Fine, we will do this the hard way. Every structure will be searched. Anyone who resists will be detained." "On whose authority?" a new voice asked. Jisiok stepped forward, his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. "You said you were from some dominion. Does your dominion have jurisdiction over Earth?" Rethus turned those burning eyes on him. For a moment, Jisiok felt like a mouse being examined by a snake. I do not need jurisdiction, Rethus said slowly. I have power. Power is not the same as authority, Jisiok replied. I am a veterinarian. I understand the difference. You may be stronger than us, but that does not make you right. The commander moved closer, his tall form casting a shadow over Jisiok. You are brave for a primitive. Or perhaps simply stupid. Tell me, have you seen the fugitive? Jisiok met his gaze without flinching. I have not seen any blue-skinned creature. I treat animals cows, pigs, dogs. Nothing exotic. Rethus studied him for a long moment. Your heart rate is elevated. You are sweating. My sensors indicate you are experiencing stress. You are a 7-foot alien threatening my village, Jisiok said flatly. Of course I am stressed. That does not mean I'm lying. Something flickered in Rethus's expression, annoyance, perhaps, or grudging respect. Human physiology was proving as difficult to read as everything else on this frustrating planet. Search his home, Rethus ordered his soldiers. Search every home if you must. They searched for hours. They tore through Jisiok's farmhouse, scanned every room, examined every closet. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Vera was miles away, safe in a bunker their technology could not detect. As the sun began to set, Rethus stood in the middle of the village square, his patience finally shattered. Listen carefully, primitives, he announced, his voice like ice. I know the fugitive is here. I know one of you is hiding her. If she is not delivered to me by sunrise, I will burn this village to the ground. The villagers looked at each other, and Jisiok saw something in their eyes that made his heart swell, not fear, but quiet determination. Mrs. Yoon spoke again. Then I suppose we have until sunrise to decide. Rethus smiled coldly. You have until sunrise to die. He turned and marched toward his ship, his soldiers following behind. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. But as soon as the aliens were out of sight, the villagers gathered around Jisiok. There was no panic, no blame, no demand that he give up the child. What do we do? Ask Kim Daeun, the blacksmith. Jisiok looked at the faces around him, his neighbors, his friends, people who had known him since he was a child. We have until sunrise, he said. That is enough time to come up with a plan. Mrs. Yoon nodded firmly. Tell us what you need. Jisiok smiled despite everything. Rethus had made a terrible mistake. He thought he was dealing with primitives who would crumble under threat. Instead, he had threatened a community that protected their own, no matter what. The humans were about to show him exactly what that meant. Alien girl in the kitchen? What the human discovered at home. The plan came together faster than Jisiok expected. By midnight, every villager knew their role, and by 3 a.m, they were ready. The key was simple. If Rethus wanted to burn a village, they would make sure there was no village to burn. Or rather, no villages to threaten. Families scattered into the mountains using paths that had existed for centuries. They hid in caves, in forest shelters, in the homes of relatives in distant towns. Within hours, the village was a ghost town, empty of everyone except those who had volunteered to stay. Jisiok was one of them. He could not leave, not with Vera still in the bunker. But he was not alone, Mrs. Yoon, Kim Daeun, and a dozen other stubborn souls had refused to abandon their homes. You should go, Jisiok told them. This is not your fight. Mrs. Yoon snorted. That child ate dinner at my store last week. She called me grandmother and asked if she could help sweep the floor. She is one of ours now. Daeun nodded firmly. Besides, someone needs to stay and witness what happens. Whatever these aliens do, the world needs to know. That was the other part of the plan, the part Rethus did not see coming. Jisiok had spent the night setting up cameras, connecting to live streams, broadcasting to every platform he could access. By the time the sun began to rise, thousands of people around the world were watching his village. "What are you doing?" Vera had asked when he brought her food in the bunker. "Making sure the whole galaxy knows what kind of people the Thalari really are," Jisiok replied. Rethus arrived exactly at sunrise, his ship descending into the village square with an ominous hum. He stepped out expecting to see terrified peasants ready to surrender. Instead, he found Jisiok standing alone in the center of the square, arms crossed, face calm. "Where are the others?" Rethus demanded, scanning the empty streets. "Gone," Jisiok said. "You cannot threaten a village that is not here." Rethus's burning eyes flickered with rage. "Then I will burn the buildings." "Go ahead. Buildings can be rebuilt. And while you burn them, the whole world will watch." He pointed to the cameras positioned on every rooftop, the phones held by the remaining villagers hiding just out of sight. "Right now, millions of humans are seeing your face. They are hearing your threats. By the time you finish burning this village, every government on Earth will know what you did and why." Rethus laughed, but there was uncertainty beneath the sound. "Your primitive governments cannot threaten the Dominion." "Maybe not," Jisiok agreed. "But the Galactic Council can." The commander went still. "Vera told me everything," Jisiok continued. "You are not supposed to be here. Earth is unregistered space. You are conducting an illegal operation to kill a child whose only crime is having the wrong parents." He stepped closer, his voice hardening. "If you harm a single human, every recording goes straight to the council. You will be exposed as a war criminal who massacred primitives to hunt down a little girl. How do you think the Dominion will react when that becomes public?" Rethus's face twisted with fury. "You are bluffing. Am I?" Jisiok pulled out his phone and showed him the live viewer count, over 2 million and climbing. 2 million witnesses so far? By noon, it will be 20 million. How many does it take before the council notices? For the first time, genuine fear flickered in Rethus's coal-red eyes. The Dominion valued secrecy above all else. A scandal of this magnitude could destroy his career, his life. "Give me the girl," he said, his voice lower now, almost pleading. "Give her to me, and I will leave peacefully." "No!" The word came from behind Jisiok. He spun around to see Vera walking toward them, her blue skin pale in the morning light. "Vera, no, I will not hide anymore," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I will not let more people suffer because of me." She walked past Jisiok and faced Commander Rethus directly. She barely came up to his waist, but she stood like she was 10 feet tall. "My father taught me that courage means standing up, even when you are afraid," she said. "I am afraid of you, Commander. But I am not going to run anymore." Rethus stared down at her, his expression unreadable. And then Jisiok was beside her, his hand on her shoulder. One by one, the remaining villagers emerged from their hiding spots, Mrs. Yoon Dae-un, the others, until they formed a wall of human bodies around the small alien girl. "You want her. You go through all of us," Jisiok said quietly. "And the whole world watches you do it." Silence stretched across the village square. Rethus looked at the cameras, at the humans standing defiantly before him, at the small blue girl who refused to bow. For the first time in his long career, he faced an enemy he could not simply destroy. "This is not over," he finally said. "Yes, it is," Jisiok replied. "Vera died in the crash. There was no survivor. That is what your report will say." Rethus's jaw tightened. But after a long moment, he turned and walked back to his ship. His soldiers followed. The vessel rose into the air and disappeared into the clouds. Vera collapsed against Jisiok's legs, shaking with relief. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Yeah," he said, lifting her into his arms. "It is over." You are safe now. 3 months later, a girl named Park Vera enrolled in the local elementary school. She had unusual silver-gray eyes and very pale skin, but she spoke Korean fluently and loved sweet potatoes. Her uncle, the village veterinarian, walked her to school every morning. The other children thought she was a bit strange, but they quickly learned she was also funny, kind, and an excellent artist. Far away, in halls of power beyond the stars, a report crossed the desk of a Galactic Council observer. It described a primitive species on an unremarkable planet, a species that had protected an alien child from one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The observer made a note in the file. Humans approach with caution. Protective instincts extend beyond their own species. Do not threaten their young, theirs, or anyone else's. And in a small village in Korea, a human and his alien niece sat on the porch watching the stars, finally at peace. "Uncle," Vera said, "do you think other humans would have done what you did?" Jisiok smiled. "I think you would be surprised what humans will do for family." She leaned against his side, content. "I am glad to be part of yours." "Me too, kid." "Me too."